Hi everyone, welcome to this video for English 102, which is going to go over your annotated bibliography assignment and what I mean when I say that we are working to synthesize the sources that you're finding. So hopefully this will be quick and painless. The assignment you all have for this week is to complete a draft of an annotated bibliography. So the instructions for this assignment, this is taken specifically from the assignment sheet, is to find and annotate 4 sources that help to answer your chosen research question. At least 3 of them should be from the library databases, and for each annotation you want to include the APA citation, a summary, and an analysis. So that all sounds fine, right? But I know several of you may be wondering, well, what exactly is an annotated bibliography? I don't. Never heard of that. And actually you have, you just maybe didn't know that that's what it was. So your bibliography is the same as a works cited, as a reference page. They all mean the same thing. It is that list of sources at the end of your research. Okay? So that you will recognize. You're going to start there, and then you're going to annotate, which means to add notes to, comment on, or analyze each of those sources in turn. All right, and then this quote from Cornell says, an annotated bibliography is a list of citations to books, articles, and documents. Each citation is followed by an annotation. The purpose of the annotation is to inform the reader of the relevance, accuracy, and quality of the sources cited. So if you guys remember, our reading last week mentioned something called the CRAP test, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in this presentation. But those questions you're asking yourself as you read your sources: is it relevant? Is it accurate for me? Do I know who wrote it and why? What's the purpose of it? Asking those questions as you're looking for sources will then help you in writing your annotated bibliography. So here is an example of an annotated bibliography. This is just one source, but your bibliography is going to have 4, okay? And this assignment is going to be individual this time, but eventually these sources will go into your group's research paper, all right? So if you'll notice, on this annotated bibliography, they have a title, page number at the top. They start with the citation for the source, so you'll notice this is a book called The Elements of Eloquence, Secrets of the Perfect Turn of Phrase. We've got the author and the year and then the publisher. Next, they have the annotation, which is written in paragraph form. So what they have here is a summary of the source. Notice it's a decently long paragraph. I would like each of your annotations to be 2 paragraphs. The first one a summary, and the second one an analysis. So the summary, like this example here, is going to be just basically, what is the source saying? What does it talk about? I don't want you to just have a 2-sentence summary for a few reasons. Likely, the sources you're getting into are pretty in-depth, so 2 sentences isn't going to give you enough to really touch on everything that the source is talking about. And also, the more that you know about the sources you're looking at, the better you can analyze them. So writing a longer summary is not always a bad thing. If you've ever done a literature review or read those for courses, a literature review involves a lot of the same skills. You're summarizing sources that you're finding. So what you want to keep in mind is that we need to be doing this annotated bibliography in APA. So some of you might also ask yourselves, well, what if I'm new to this? What if I'm not great at APA format yet? And although we've been working with it for a few weeks, I know some of you may still feel a little uneasy about it, and I want to sort of go over a few tips and answer a couple questions you might have. So what you need to cite a source, basically, what you need to start with, at the very least, you need an author, a date, and a title. The very least, all right? But usually you'll also need the organization, the publication agency, and the way in which the source is released. So is it a book? Is it a website? Is it a journal article? Look for buttons on databases that say cite, or articles that you read. Sometimes they'll have a citation listed already. So look for those to help you in figuring out what information you need. It just depends on the type of source and how many authors. Some other questions I've gotten from students are, sometimes you'll see journal articles that have what's called a DOI, and it'll say the letters DOI and then have a string of letters and numbers after it. That's a permanent link to that source. I've seen some of you guys just copy over the URL to EBSCO, and unfortunately that's not going to work because you have to log into EBSCO with your username and password for eStorm. Someone else won't have that information. So if you just give me the link to EBSCO that you used, that's not the link you should use. The second question, how can I find full text, not full text, but if you're looking for full text articles, which many of you should be, you can add full text, PDF, or HTML full text to your search. You might be finding primary and secondary sources, and if you remember from week 2, I believe our reading discussed how primary sources are interviews, surveys, first-hand accounts of observations. Secondary sources are the majority of what you all are finding for this first assignment, this first writing project is going to be secondary, which are recounts of other primary sources. Do I need to cite the author every time I mention their work in my writing? So within one paragraph, you want to cite the author at the first mention of their work. Every time after, you don't need to cite it if you're staying within that same source. But say I start my paragraph with one source and I move to a new one, I would cite both of those. But then what if I move back to that first one? You would need to cite that again. Really, think of your in-text citation as ways for your reader to follow your research and to be able to pick out which sources are being used where. A lot of students will ask me, well, do I need to memorize how to cite things in APA? And the good, lucky answer is no. A resounding no. If you feel like that's the best way for you to really learn how to do this, that's fine. But there are resources here for you. All right, I'm going to load some examples of annotated bibliographies, some guides to using APA, and of course the Purdue OWL website should help you as well. If you don't know, ask. If you can't find it, ask. So, let's talk about how we should find quality sources. This is something we talked about in your reading this past week. Like I said, what you're going to use is the CRAP test. And it looks like this image didn't come out great, but I'll just walk you guys through it anyway. So, if you remember from the Krauss reading, CRAP essentially stands for, is it current, relevant, authoritative, accurate, and what's its purpose? All right, if you ask these 5 questions about every source that you find, you're going to guarantee that you have quality, useful sources that will help you in answering your research question. So the research questions that we wrote this past week in the discussion board, that's that relevant question. You're not asking yourself just, okay, is this source about my social issue? Maybe, but is it really helping to answer my question? Do I know who the author is? Is what it's saying accurate to the best of my knowledge? And do I know why this information was published? Often when we look at social issues, you might run into sources that look objective, but actually aren't. This is why I really want to encourage you all to use academic databases first, because those are vetted, they're often peer-reviewed, and we can trust the information there to be accurate and to have an objective purpose. That's not to say that our sources don't come with inherent bias, because we as humans have biases. We have opinions, we have experience that really does influence the way that we see the world and the way that we process information. So be skeptical and use this CRAP test to really help you sort through what sources are good. The ultimate goal of this assignment, of actually our first writing project as a whole, is to be finding new information that you then synthesize. talked about this with the writing project description, but synthesis is when we are combining ideas into something new, taking new and old knowledge and piecing them together to create a bigger picture. So that's essentially what I'm encouraging you all to do with this writing project in pieces. So to do this, you are searching for new information, reading those sources, summarizing them, and analyzing them. These 4 steps will get you to synthesizing this information. So make sure that you're using academic databases, narrowing your search. I recommend the first step of doing these assignments is citing an APA. Many of us maybe have like tons of tabs open of all the sources we like to use. And then say one day your Chrome browser crashes and you lose all your tabs. Well, what happens then? So my advice is to write down the APA citation before you get into reading your sources. A few tips for that: skim the sources that you're reading. Don't feel like you have to sit there and make it through single word, because likely the information that you need is in the introduction, the conclusion, or in the methods. So be thorough, but don't feel like you need to spend your entire life reading your sources. Then you're going to want to summarize these, put the main ideas of those sources into your own words. Please don't forget an in-text citation, okay? Even in an annotated bibliography, whenever you are discussing a source, analyzing it, or summarizing it, you need an in-text citation, all right? The last step is to analyze. So your first paragraph of your annotated bibliography will be that summary. After that, I want to know what you think about it. How does this source compare to others that you found? How does it compare to what you know? What was surprising about it? What are you questioning? This is really where you can tell me that you've thought critically about how this source fits into your knowledge. And lastly, I want to remind you all that part of the reason we're doing this as a group project is because academic research is a conversation. When you're reading sources, when you're trying to do research, a lot of us often do this alone. We're sitting at our computer, looking through databases, bookmarking websites, and then feeling like we're doing all of this for what? Just to process in our own heads? Not really. This is a quote from the reading games that you all had to read in recent weeks. It says, "Reading academic text is a deeply social activity. Talking with your professors and peers about text can not only help you understand your readings better, but it can push your thinking and clarify your own stances on issues that really matter to you." This is the key to understanding the research you're doing. Talk in your group. Discuss your sources. Do your sources, do you think they'll help someone else in your group? Do you think you might use some that someone else is having? Absolutely. You need to find 4 sources just your own, but that doesn't mean that you guys can't use your sources throughout the research paper we're going to write in a few weeks. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of your annotated bibliography assignment and what I mean when I talk about synthesizing sources. If you've got questions, go to Blackboard first, then Purdue Well, then ask your group, and if all else fails, shoot me an email. I'm going to try and get your research proposals back to you all in the first few days of the week. Remember that you can do a draft of your annotated bibliography, and then the final draft will be due next week. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week 4 of the semester, and I will talk to you soon.